Alright, we are looking at Chapter 15, Section 2. This is labeled The Renaissance Moves North. And our focus here is why did it move from Italy and north into the rest of Europe? Also, who were the people that pushed that along, particularly writers, authors? How did they have a hand in that? And then, who were some artists, and what sort of art would cause people to start thinking differently? And so we start out here, the very first thing that's mentioned in our text is about movable type, the idea of building a new printing press that you could reprint the exact same thing over and over and over again. And that is uh, credited to Johannes Gutenberg. And you'll find here in this chapter that some of these guys that we talk about have some really fun names to say. So don't let all the vowels scare you. Sometimes listen to how I say it, and that'll help you remember things a little bit. So Johannes Gutenberg was the inventor of the printing press. And the idea of a printing press is that you can put things together, put letters together, clamp them down, rub some ink across the top, and then when you press paper on top of it, it's like doing a stamp. And you get the exact same thing over and over and over again. And because Gutenberg invented this idea of movable type in a printing press, you could make a whole page of text, then you could rub the ink on it, and you could print that same page over and over and over again. So he did that for page 1 of the Bible, and then page 2 of the Bible, and then page 3 of the Bible. And instead of, like we've talked about with the monks in the monasteries, rewriting the entire book, now you've got one person can redo page after page after page. And so uh, I've got a little video for you to watch here after you finish this one up, that there is a man explaining a little bit about the history, and then more importantly for you, how the printing press worked. So I want you to check that out next. And it's pretty fascinating how that all worked. So take a look at that here next. So because of Gutenberg, now books are cheaper. It's just like, as we've talked about in the past, that as technology improves, it becomes cheaper later on. So initially, it's like when you buy that brand new TV, you know, when HD TVs first came out about 8-10 years ago, they were really, really expensive. People were paying $7,000-8,000 for an HD TV that was 25-30 inches across. And people thought that was a great deal. Look at this picture, it's spectacular. Well, now you can go to Walmart and find yourself an HD TV that's the same size for maybe just a few $100s. And so it is 90% less from what it used to be. And that's pretty amazing. Well, same deal here. Books were really, really difficult to print because it took so long for a monk to rewrite it. Gutenberg here comes up with a new technology that allows the same thing to be remade over and over and over again pretty cheaply, pretty quickly, and that brings the price down. So everybody now is able to get a book. They're much, much cheaper. As we move on, then how does Renaissance thought spread? What are the conditions that cause that? And so industry and trade in Northern Europe expand. The people of Italy are able to add more trade routes. And so here we're looking, here's us right down here where the hand is, and let's go across way often a little bit, and in the previous, that Italy, because it just into the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, it was great for people could come from the Middle East to Africa. They could come through fairly easy. We've talked about it many, many times in the past. It was much easier to travel across the water than it was across the land. You could go much faster. You could carry a lot more stuff because you didn't have to put it on wheels. You could just float it. And so people could come over here and
right in here, Genoa, and then over on this we have Venice. Right here, close to the mainland of Europe. The ships would come in and pick up at Florence and down here at Naples, and they'd come in, make their trade, drop off all of these things, and then stuff could go up on these ode trades up in Europe. So we've talked a lot of times in the past that, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that gets traded, but there's discussion between these people, and so the information gets passed on as well. Okay. Also at the time, you've got feudalism is falling apart, and we've talked about that in the previous chapter, that feudalism starts to lose some of its power, and particularly the church is losing power. Not that people don't believe in Christianity anymore. It's not that they have issues with Jesus. It's that they're not sure that the church should have the power that it had in the Middle Ages. And so the church's power started to weaken. Books about Renaissance ideas are printed. So Gutenberg's printing press gets reproduced, and there are lots and lots of them all over medieval or Renaissance Europe, and so people are able to reprint the same books many, many times. Those same ideas get passed on, and they get passed on much quicker because they're reprinted using the printing press rather than waiting on somebody to rewrite it for you. And then humanism becomes popular. The idea of studying the classics, Greece and Rome, that people are, they're not skipping over their Christian religion. It's just that they are realizing that the Greeks and Romans knew other things. They knew more about normal everyday life and how things worked. And they weren't just being asked to trust on faith that the human body worked. That they could figure out how the human body worked. And if you were sick, there was a way to help you. And if you were injured, there was a way to help you heal. And you could help figure out more information about growing better food and raising better animals. Now, as I mentioned a couple of times before, the Renaissance in particular is about people and how they change ideas, what they focused on. And so the first guy we're going to look at here is named, again, scary name when you look at it, but it's not that bad. It's Desiderius Erasmus. Desiderius Erasmus. And if you just remember Erasmus, that's all right. Okay. Desiderius Erasmus was a Catholic priest, and the thing that he is well known for is that he was taking humanism, the idea of studying Greek and Roman literature and what they understood, their science, their math, things like that, and applying it to Christianity and helping people understand that you can know things about how science works without forsaking God. He started to question some of the Catholic issues because he said, some of these things that we are being told that we have to do sometimes doesn't seem to be a question of faith. It's a question of following directions, and that's not necessarily from the Bible. He wrote a book called In Praise of Folly, and by writing that book, he aimed to kind of make fun of the way the Catholic Church did some things, and it's these ideas that he's pointing out. They don't have anything to do with faith, and so he took sort of a slightly humorous approach to try to convince people that this is not a good way to handle things. And he told people that about some of the things we've talked about before, that it seems like some of the people higher up in the church those cardinals, those bishops, even the Pope, sometimes looked like they were, corrupt. And the church was trying to cover that up and not tell people about that corruption. A friend of Desiderius Erasmus was named Sir Thomas More. And More wrote a book called Utopia. And knowing what utopia means is kind of helpful. Utopia is a Greek word that means a perfect place or a perfect society. And so in Sir Thomas More's book Utopia, he was not pointing out what was wrong with the day that he lived in. He was pointing out that things could be perfect. That if we looked at how the Greeks did some things and what they were trying to do, that we could overcome some bad things that were going on, and we could potentially reach a perfect society. The next guy to consider as we get into more literature, and these are people from Northern Europe. Erasmus was from Northern Italy, and More was, I believe, English. Then you get to Francois Rabelais. So this is obviously a Frenchman, and he knew of Erasmus. He read a lot of Erasmus's writings, and he was not a he was not a priest. He was not in the church, but he was more of a philosopher. He thought about things, tried to figure out how things could be done better. And one of the things that he's well known for is that he wrote a piece called Gargantua and Pantagruel. And it was a comedy. It was meant to be funny. And kind of like what Erasmus was doing up here, he was pointing out how bad things were by demonstrating how good things could be based on information that they knew from the ancient Greeks. Then, as we move forward, there's Sir Thomas Wyatt. Sir Thomas Wyatt is really important to us because he introduced this new form of poetry called the sonnet. And yes, I see right there, Italian is misspelled, and so was poetry. The style of poetry called the sonnet, and the sonnet is written in rhyme, and so when you think of poetry, you often think of rhyming. So he had a lot to do with that, and he wrote in Italian. So he was very important with that idea, and people were excited to see this new format of poetry. And when Wyatt started writing in sonnets, this other guy, William Shakespeare, you may have heard of, he did a whole lot of sonnets as well. But Shakespeare is most well known for his plays. And he is so well known that it is easy to find not only people still performing Shakespeare's plays, but also to find other plays, other movies, other books that are based on things that Shakespeare wrote. They use the same basic plot and put in, change the characters, make them more modern, change the way they talk, things like that. But Shakespeare used a lot of Greek and Roman stories. If you remember a video that we watched back a few months ago when talking about Greece, so that was back before Christmas even, one of the plays that was being shown was a woman who was playing the part of Jason from Jason and the Argonauts, his wife. And that was mentioned a couple of times in that video. So Greek and Roman stories were used a lot. In fact, there's one that is just called Julius Caesar, and it is about the last few days of Caesar's life and then his death. And sometimes people think they're kind of difficult to keep up with because it is written in Old English, is 500 years old. It's kind of difficult to think in the same form, the same words that they used, but also because everything is written in poetry, that it is sometimes difficult because they change the order of words that we're used to. But Shakespeare is extremely, extremely important to us because of how he has had an effect on all kinds of writing in even today. And looking at artists of the Northern Renaissance. So these guys up here were English and French. Now artists from the Netherlands and other areas in Northern Europe. One guy to look at, this is Jan van Eyck. Jan van Eyck is well known because he started trying to create realistic paintings. He would layer the oil, he would use bright colors, he would put in a lot of detail to make his pictures really come to life and be impressive. And then the last guy we want to look at here is Albrecht Dürer. And that little umlaut there makes the U sound like Y. So Dürer was he painted some, but he also did woodcuts, engravings, and he's really important because he went to Italy specifically to see classic art, and he wanted to see how those early Renaissance artists in Italy did things. And so as he did that, he was influenced by those and brought that back and put it in his own work as well.